Howdy, howdy. Sue Devil here, and welcome to a combat analysis video where we're going to look at melee attack and defense stats. We're going to look at damage types. We're going to look at impact damage. We're going to look at charge bonus, bonus versus infantry, and how they all interact in the game. And this is a reboot of a video I recently did, which is an update of a video I did 2 years ago looking at melee attack and defense stats. And Total Warhammer 2 changed from Total Warhammer 1 in some of the stats, but we'll go over that. And Butterwitchtel has just been amazing in the comments, giving me good resources, looking at my formulas and making some good corrections. So I have the video that I made, I put it on to unlisted, so anyone who made comments in there can always look at my analysis fail in full view. So I've gone back and done a lot more analysis, got about 350 to 400 data points to really start to understand these combat stats and how they interact. And I'm going to go over them with you, and I'm going to share an amazing resource that Butterwitchtel shared with me, where you can go and look at a lot of these things. Now, there is some stats on there that still seem not right based on my testing, and I'm going to go over those. But basically, I'll just go over to the spreadsheet, and I'll start by defining some terms. So melee attack, charge bonus, and weapon strength type. So this is today's date, and we're going to start going through this. So the definitions are important. So weapon strength equals weapon damage plus armor piercing damage, and I mix these up. People often use these interchangeably, and it can be confusing and it's very easy to confuse. And the original impetus for me to update this video was understanding what magic damage acts on. Does it act on weapon strength, weapon damage? What exactly does it act on? And I've done some testing to go over that. So resists and bypasses act on weapon strength as a whole. So fire, magic damage, physical resist, magic resist, ward save, they act on your weapon strength as a whole. Bonus versus large, charge bonus, bonus versus infantry add to melee attack and weapon strength. So they add to your entire weapon strength, not just your weapon damage or just your armor piercing damage, and they are in the ratio that they exist on the character that you have. So if you have twice as much weapon damage as you have armor piercing damage, your bonus versus large, bonus versus infantry, or charge bonus will add twice as much weapon damage as armor piercing damage, and that weapon damage, of course, can be mitigated by armor. So one of the things that I found on my testing is it looks like charge bonus only adds half to melee attack. So if your charge bonus is 60, it looks like it's only adding 30% to melee attack. Now, I'm not 100% sure. I only got about 350 data points, but that's what it looks like to me right now. But bonus versus large and bonus versus infantry do add their full amount to melee attack, and they are constant. So your charge bonus is maximized when you impact, and then it goes down over 13 seconds or so in a linear fashion. But bonus versus large, bonus versus infantry stay if you're fighting the right unit for the entire time. So they add to weapon strength. So the addition to weapon strength splits the same ratio as weapon damage and armor piercing damage. So that's just saying what I said before. So the bonus versus large, infantry, and charge bonus adds to your weapon strength, and then it's split between your weapon damage and your armor piercing damage at the ratio they exist on your character as it is. And I think now I have very, very good data to confirm that is actually true. Alright, so buffs and debuffs can add to one or the other or both or damage types. There's so many buffs and debuffs in this game, and that's what makes this an amazing game to analyze. It is so interesting and fascinating that I'm always learning something new. So this game is amazing. So armor mitigation equals your weapon damage times the armor of your opponent. Approximately, it goes between 50% of your opponent's armor and 100% of your opponent's armor, but the average is 0.75. So 1 minus 0.75 times your opponent's armor over 100 multiplied by your weapon damage equals the actual weapon damage that you do. Now, this does conclude a random roll, and it looks like you have a minimum of 1 damage. If your opponent has 200 armor and you have no armor piercing, you'll still do 1 damage, at least 1 damage to them. Now, this doesn't quite look like it's random. I'm going to go over some of the data I took. I took a lot of data, and the data does not look random. It looks like the data possibly comes out of a lookup table. So, which would make sense. You wouldn't want to be doing random roll calculations for every single event. You might want to use some sort of table to refer to what your armor mitigation might be once the hit has actually occurred in game. I'm not really sure, but it just doesn't look very random to me, and I'm going to show you that when we get there. So a few little tidbits. If you have 99 armor, technically that will waste no armor mitigation. So if you had 100 armor, someone is always going to get at least 1 damage out of their weapon damage, is what it looks like. So at 99 armor, you're wasting no armor. 134 maxes against the average, and if you have 198 armor, it will always return 1 damage for the weapon damage. So really your maximum is 198. Your average of 134 is going to get most of it, and at 99 that means your armor is technically wasting no damage. So that's kind of a nice number. If you have 100 armor, that's a very, very nice number. 9,500 armor. So actually there are 4, and I added to this very recently during my testing. There are 4 main sources of randomness in a fight. So number 1 is actually hitting in game. So in game, if your unit needs to hit the other unit, your axe needs to contact, or your cone of attack actually needs to contact a unit that's in that cone. And if your unit gets bumped around or moved around and it doesn't hit, the rolls don't take place. So that's why, it's possible to dodge a charge. It's possible to actually use a single unit like a lord to dodge an attack if you're very good. So it is an actual source of randomness in the game. The second source of randomness is your armor rolls. The third source of randomness is stagger and knockdown animations, and they can be pretty crushing. You can get into animation loops, and you can have really weird things happening, and that was one of the reasons the Ironbreakers used to be so weak, is they get stuck in this weird animation loop where they could get hit 9 or 10 times in a row before they returned one attack, and that happened with gyrocopters too. And the fourth source of randomness is impact damage. So I don't have a full set of data on impact damage, but it definitely looks like there's 4 discrete levels of impact damage, because 2 units can hit each other at full speed and not actually hit each other but still do damage to each other, which is, I'll explain that when I get into the data. Now we go to the percent chance to hit, and this is what I had wrong. This is what changed from Warhammer 1 to Warhammer 2. So the percent chance to hit is 35 plus your melee attack minus your opponent's melee defense. And the minimum percent chance to hit is 8%, and the maximum is 9%, or 90%. So in Warhammer 1 that was 40%, and your minimum was actually 10%. So this is one of the reasons it changed, and I noticed it right when I started playing my Warhammer 2 campaign, as the battles seemed to take longer, and I noticed it right away, and I think I commented on that in one of my first 2 or 3 episodes, that the combat really felt like it was taking longer. And this is definitely why, because the base chance to hit was lowered by 5%, plus the minimum was lowered to 8%. And this is actually really important for dwarves, and dwarves actually just had a kind of a jump in improvement in multiplayer from Warhammer 1 to Warhammer 2, and this is specifically why. This affected the dwarfs the most, that 35% base chance going from 40 to 35, and the minimum being 8%, because dwarfs have a lot of melee defense. So there were a lot of units that with that 40% could get above the 10% minimum, and there is a lot of units that only got the 10% minimum, so the damage basically from Warhammer 1 to Warhammer 2 has been reduced by 2% for a lot of units. Like zombies hitting Longbeards will only hit 8% of the time instead of 10% of the time now, and everything hitting dwarfs will generally hit quite a bit less and will be closer to that minimum 8%. And it was pretty noticeable. Dwarf just got better when Warhammer 2 came around. So your damage is basically your weapon damage multiplied by the armor mitigation of your opponent's armor plus the armor piercing damage, and that whole thing is multiplied by damage type modifiers. And there is the impact damage bit in there, but I'm not going to say exactly how I think it works right now because I'm not too sure. I think it has to do with mass and speed and maybe even relative speed. I'm not really sure, but those are the key things. So damage modifiers like fire damage, magic damage, you know, these types of things act on the entire formula, not just one or the other within that formula. So these things are, again, seem pretty obvious, but they're not so obvious. Its physical resistance reduces physical damage. That's your base damage. That's the damage that everyone has. Magic damage bypasses physical resistance, and magic resistance reduces magical damage. Now these things interact a fair bit in the game because a lot of units have magic resistance or physical resistance or magic damage. The one thing that doesn't interact as much as you'd think is fire damage. So it only affects units that have a weakness to fire or have been made so through a debuff. And that's kind of why I try and put my Slayers and Warriors of Dragonfire Pass together, because you can just basically get an extra 22% damage if you've got them fighting together. And that's against anything. You know, that debuff that Dragonback Slayers put on something, it doesn't matter what it is. It will reduce, it'll make them 22% more weak to fire, and if you're using your Warriors of Dragonfire Pass, they will do 22% more damage. So Ward Save mitigates all damage. You don't see that a lot. There are a few units that have some amount of that or some buff or debuff or whatever it is in the game. You see that more in campaign, but it mitigates all damage. It doesn't matter what kind it is, physical, magic, or fire. So there are many other modifiers in combat. Now this is another thing that makes this game so amazing. So the other modifiers you can have are vigor if your units are tired, flank attacks if they're attacked in the side, rear attacks if you have a hill advantage, if you're in water and have the aquatic trait, or if you're a small unit in water and don't have the aquatic trait, if you have strider, you know, you're in a forest, impact damage, which is a weird one. I'm going to need a lot more data before I can figure out what that calculation does, but you can get magic buffs on melee attack or melee or damage types or debuffs. Units can buff and debuff each other. You have units with armor sundering. There's just so many modifiers in combat. I'm not going to go through them all. Eventually I would like to go through and really understand all these with perfect clarity, but it takes a lot of time. So the testing that I'm going to do is I'm going to go down and first I'm just going to go and look at Grombrindle versus a Banshee, and then I'm going to go to some of the more in-depth testing that I've done to really understand these charge bonuses and whatnot. So one of the things I want to demonstrate first is that and the Banshees are really good because they have 0 armor and they have 75% physical resistance. So Grombrindle has magic damage, which will bypass all of that physical resistance, so all of his weapon strength will hit. Doesn't matter what the split is between weapon damage and armor piercing damage, meaning that he will do 500 damage every single time he hits that Banshee. Plus, the very first hit on a charge, he's going to get an extra 45 damage in. So he's going to do 545 damage to that Banshee the very first time it hits him. And I just want to go and show you that. So we're going to just go do a quick battle so you can see for yourself that the charge bonus actually gets added in full against a unit when it is applied. And it's the same for bonus versus large and bonus versus infantry. So we're just going to go and hit that Banshee. And we have 70% chance to hit plus a pretty big bonus, and he only has 38 chance. So that is the 1 in 10. Those are the 1 in 10 times we're not going to hit. So we're just going to do this again really quick. Rematch. I might remember to cut this out. I might not remember to cut it out. If you're listening to me talk right now, I have forgotten to cut it out. So anyways, let's get this going. We're going to see Grombrindle hit this Banshee. And Wow, that's 2 in a row. That's amazing. Randomness. It is fun sometimes and it is unfun other times. You know, maybe I'm not going to cut this out just to show you what I go through when I do testing for you guys. Oh, man. Okay. Boom. All right. So he's hit the Banshee. The Banshee has 1,840 health. So we're just going to flip over to the spreadsheet. And what we can see here is the Banshee starts with 2385 and subtract 1840 up here. And that is indeed 545 damage that Grombrindle has done to the Banshee, which is his total weapon strength of 185 weapon damage, 315 armor piercing, plus all of his 45 charge bonus has hit that Banshee. Now, we actually will go and do some testing. I don't know if I'll put it in this video, but you can see the impact damage even on a Banshee. And I've tested with Archeon because he does magical damage, the Fey Enchantress because she does magical damage, she's extremely fast, Sathoril because he's a really big unit and does magical damage, and I think the, what is it? The Tomb Kings has one. So if we look at the Tomb Kings, they have a really big thing that does magic damage. Where is he? This guy right here, the Sphinx of Usekth does magic damage. So, and he's the massive and he has pretty good speed, so you can see his impact damage on top of everything. But so that's just to show that your charge bonus in fact does get added to your total weapon strength in some way to get your 545 damage, because the Banshee has no armor to mitigate anything, and the Grombrindle's magic attack bypasses all of the physical resistance. So we can see that if that was any other way, it wouldn't be 545, but it's precisely 545 damage, and you can test that 100 times. I've tested it about 20 times now just to make absolutely sure it works every single time. So I did some other testing, and this is not the testing that I want to show. Okay, testing on the Paladin. I did a whole bunch of testing down here, just 20 tests. Whoops. So I will get back to this. I ran Paladins into each other on a horse, and that's where I started getting with this weird thing where sometimes they would hit and not actually hit each other, but they still do 10 damage to each other. So you can do impact damage even if you don't hit. And one of the things that I found is I was calculating how often units were hitting each other, and they were only hitting each other about 77% of the time. Now, if you take your 35 plus your charge bonus divided by 2 minus the melee defense, it actually is saying we should be hitting 75% of the time. If you use the old numbers, which are 40% starting plus your full charge bonus for your chance to hit, you're at 115, but they're only hitting each other 77% of the time. So that appears to be, that's where I'm getting that number. I don't know it to be 100% correct, but I'm getting a lot of data that's showing me that this charge bonus adds fully to your weapon strength, but it only adds half of your charge bonus to your melee attack on that first hit, is what it appears to be. So we'll go and take a look. I started with Paladin on a horse, and then my numbers started to come out very strange. And so I'm going to go over that data at some other point. So then I just took Paladins on foot. So Paladin is actually a decent unit to look at. So if we go and get Bretonia, okay, and we grab a Paladin, and just remove his abilities, and I can show you that. I don't know if I need to show you that, but basically your Paladin costs 475. He has 85 armor, so he's less than 100. So he's not going to get anything weird happening. He has 390 weapon strength, 255 regular, and 135 armor piercing, and 40 charge bonus. So I'll show you how I did the tests. Might as well. And just so that you can see for yourself. Because, I mean, I'm getting great, amazing comments that are really helping me understand the game. So I think it'll probably be more useful if you actually see the test yourself, and you can see if there are any errors, or you can confirm that these are all correct. So what I wanted to do was run like units into each other so I could double the speed at which I was getting the data. So basically, just run these. I think I ran these guys into each other, you know, like 30 times or something like that, 40 times to get 80 data points. So really just grab them, and I just want to get that first hit. So I'll wait till they hit, boom. So I'll stop, and then I'll get, okay, so this guy has 2499 health, and this guy has 2536. So we'll go to the spreadsheet, and that's where I was putting the data in. So what their starting health was, what the health I recorded was. So 2560, 2500, 2481, 2481. And every time they didn't hit each other, and it looks like there is no impact damage ever with melee units, like small units on each other. I could be wrong, but I've taken a lot of data and I haven't seen any of that. So I think I took 51 data points on this. Yeah, 51 plus another 23 of non-hits. So what I calculated was they're actually hitting each other 68.9% of the time. Now, if I take half of their charge bonus of 40 and add that to their chance to hit with the 35, it says they got a 60% chance to hit. And if I use the old formula with 40 and their full charge bonus in, it says they have an 85% chance to hit. Now, it looks like they're closer to 60 than 85. It looks like they're closer to 60 than even 70 if you start with 35. So what I also did to analyze this data, I took the average damage of all these contacts. So the average damage was 263.8, and I looked at the minimum damage and the maximum damage that was done. Then I also looked at the average of between the minimum and the maximum, because these are two different things, right? Your actual average and then the average between your minimum and your maximum. So the old calculation I had in there was giving me 242 should be their average damage. The new calculation that includes all of their charge bonus in with the weapon damage and armor piercing damage as a straight ratio gives me 251 damage. Now, I don't know how many data points I'd have to take. I took 50. Maybe I need 200 or 300 to get it really, really close. But what I'm seeing is what I did to confirm that the old formula was absolutely not correct is, and this doesn't confirm it in this one, is I looked at the minimum and the maximum of the old formula are 179 and 305. And the minimum and the maximum of the new formula are 311 and 191. So it says the minimum you're going to ever hit for is 191. Here it says the minimum is 193 and the maximum is 300. I'd probably need at least another 50. But I've done more tests to show, and it gets closer and closer the more tests you do. I've done more tests with other units to make sure there's not just something weird going on with these units. So the formula I had up here, I wanted to take into account this the resistances, but also this charge bonus. So I actually put it in here as a multiplication against the ratio of weapon damage to total weapon strength multiplied by the charge bonus, added in and then mitigated by the average armor. So that's kind of undo, edit, undo. So that's how I've got to this average damage that they should be doing of 251. The numbers actually came to 263. The average between the min and max are 246. So the big thing here is that hit percentage is 68.92. And again, this is making sense with when they're on a horse of 76.92 and the calculation says 75 when they should be hitting each other 90% of the time. So the next set of units I looked at was the Arch Lector. So I went and I thought it would be a good unit to use because I'm planning on doing some continuing tests. So in that battle, and the reason is the Arch Lector actually has multiple mount options. So if we looked at the Arch Lector, where are you, Arch Lector? There we go. And get his abilities off. Now the reason I wanted to take him is he has a very low melee attack and a very low charge bonus, and his weapon strength is very little armor piercing, but he has 95 armor, which I really like, And his mount option keeps him at 95 armor but gives him 70 speed, and now they can go much faster. And he has another Barded Warhorse option which gives him 58 speed and 120 armor. So I'm going to see if I can calculate that out eventually. I just ran the test with him on foot. So get the Arch Lector. What does he come out at the price? 1537. So you can grab him here. 1537. I get his abilities off so he doesn't do anything weird. Okay, 650, 650. Alright, he has 95 armor, 31 speed. Okay, so we'll just do... And this test took a long time because if you look, his melee attack is 30, melee defense is 55. So you add 35 to that, he has a 10% chance to hit. You add his charge bonus, that's going to give him a 23% chance to hit if you add 13 into that. So we'll just start this battle. This one was... it just there wasn't a whole lot of action in this. You know, maybe if we get really lucky they'll both hit on this, but I just want to demonstrate it so you can see how I tested this. Okay, getting there. Get these guys going, and boom. Okay, well, one didn't hit and one did hit for 2861. So we'll go and look. The Arch Lector, 2899, 2899, 2813. So the calculation I had was they would do 204 damage with the minimum of 136 and a maximum of 271. Here it has a minimum of 129 and maximum of 267 with the old calculation. But here's the big difference. It says with only using half of their charge bonus instead of all of their charge bonus to calculate their chance to hit on the charge, gives a 23% chance to hit on the charge, a 41% chance if you use all of their charge bonus in that 40%. So I know it's 35 now, but and basically when we look at all the data, I think they hit each other 16 times and missed each other 50 times. So when I calculate that out, it gives a 24% hit ratio. So this is looking pretty good, are pretty reasonable in some of these tests. And I wonder if I got... So I'm going to just take a bit of an aside to talk about why I think this is not the armor roll is not specifically random and might be a lookup table. It's because you get, when you're doing the test, you get a lot of these numbers that are the same, like 2481, 2481, 2481, 2481. It happens again and again. So I grabbed all the finishing healths and I sorted them in order. So the minimum was 2466, but you can see we have two 2474s and 2480s. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And then 2481s, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 2492s, 1, okay, 2496, 2500s, looks like we have about 8, and 2510s, 3, 2529s, we got about 5, and you can see that it looks like there's, I mean, random wouldn't give you data like this. It would never give you data like this. So I think the roll for the armor is maybe it's going to a lookup table of some sort that's more discrete, and which would make sense because it would be faster. But anyways, that's why I think that. So I did the Arch Lector, and I'm gonna do some more testing eventually where I put them on here to his two versions of horseback to see if speed makes any difference in that impact damage. So it looks like they hit each other 24% of the time. The calculation says 23 if you use half the charge bonus, and the average damage is 209. The calculation said they do 204. If you look at their minimum and maximum, the difference between that is 199. Looks like this is looking more and more like being correct. Now, the most accurate set of data, it looks like, with the exception of the hit chance, is Necrotect on Necrotect. And these guys just seem to absolutely hate each other. So we'll look at Necrotects. I thought they were another good unit that I could look at because they have a lower level of armor and they have a bonus versus infantry. Oh, son of a gun. Okay, see defeat. End battle. Alright, so I grabbed the Necrotect, and we're just going to grab a Tomb King. Where is he? Tomb Kings. And the Necrotect. Alright, and I just get his abilities off. And the reason, again, I like the Necrotect is he's got 50 armor. He's got more melee attack than melee defense, so he's going to hit lots. And he has 360 weapon damage, but he has a big bonus versus infantry of 20. Doesn't have a great big charge bonus, it's only 20. It'd be nice if it was a little bit bigger, but we could see that pronounced differential. But that's not really going to matter. You're going to see the data came out very good on the damage side, and I think absolutely verified that the formula is correct with respect to the minimum and the maximums and the distribution of charge bonus, melee, charge bonus, bonus versus infantry being added as a ratio to both melee, or to both weapon damage and armor piercing weapon damage. I think that's absolutely confirmed with this testing. It seems to be anyways, so I will go and grab the Necrotect here. Okay, and get his abilities off. Got them both. Yep. Yeah, these guys really, my testing, they hit each other like 94% of the time. So, which was very, very high. I guess these guys are, you just never put two Necrotechs in a room. You know how they are. You know, always bragging about healing big constructs, and you know, they just like to fight, I guess. So we'll get them going, and well, and boom, of course one doesn't hit. But you can see the 2841, maximum 2841. This guy is 2562. So we'll go and look at the data, and 2561, you know, that's kind of where I saw this. And when I put in the bonus versus infantry, so I added this into the melee attack and into the weapon strength, and split up between weapon damage and armor piercing damage. So I don't know, you can see here I just took the charge bonus divided by 2 for the melee attack and the full bonus versus infantry, and this damage calculation I actually added in the bonus versus infantry and charge bonus together, and then multiplied them by the division of weapon damage over weapon strength, and then armor piercing over weapon strength to get the correct ratio into that into the formula. So we'll go, and the calculated damage was 300 on, it said it was going to get 300 average. And this is the old minimum and maximum. If I was using the old formula, the minimum was 250 and the maximum was 315. So we got here a minimum of 267 in all of our data and a maximum of 332. So this is saying my maximum is definitely out. So the old formula absolutely doesn't work. And the new formula looks really good. It says the minimum damage is going to be 267 and the maximum is 333. And our data set gave us 267 and 332 with an average of 295. And the average between these two came to 299, and our calculation is 300. So this is looking like very, very good data. Unfortunately, they hit each other 94% of the time, which is a counterpoint to these other data points. So I'm not absolutely sure that it is charge bonus divided by 2, because this is telling me my calculation would give them an 80% chance to hit, and the old one would give them a 95, or actually a 90 if you take that 40 and put it to a 35. And you can look at all the data points that I got in there. I think I took 51 on these guys. Yeah, took 51 data points to get all the damage as well. And this data set actually came out very nice in that the average is very close to the calculated average. The actual minimum was right on the money with the calculated minimum, and the actual maximum was one point away from the calculated maximum. So it looks like the formula is absolutely taking the weapon damage and armor piercing damage, the charge bonus and bonus versus infantry, and I would say bonus versus large, though I haven't tested, will add in to these two as a ratio. Some will be mitigated, some won't be mitigated, and then we can see that your other, oh, these are my M card. Okay, I'm not going to go over those guys. So you can see that that's how they actually add through, and the numbers seem to add up quite nicely. So I don't know if I need to go through much past that. I do want to go over the impact damage stuff, because it's definitely weird. It's hard to like, it's discrete. So it looks like there's 4 discrete levels of impact damage from what I can see, and I'm not 100% sure, so I don't know that it's a precise calculation. It might just be how big of the thing you are versus how big of the thing you're going against. The one thing that I want to show everyone is a great resource that Butterwitchtel showed to me, and I will show to you, is this website here, which is www.twwstats.com, which is amazing. And it has every single unit, and you can go to the unit. Like if I want to go to the Warriors of Dragonfire Pass, I can look at their leadership, speed, run speed, melee attack, and it'll break down their melee attack, and that's where it says your minimum is 8%, max 90%, and it shows the formula 35% plus attacker's melee versus defender's melee defense. The one thing is, if it says charge bonus, I don't know if it goes, it'll go over. It has weapon strength, base damage, and armor piercing damage, bonus versus large, bonus versus infantry, charge bonus, and it'll say that, it says in here that it adds to, that 28 charge bonus adds 28 to your melee attack, and it fades away linearly over 13 seconds. But what I'm seeing is not this. And it just could be I just haven't taken enough data, but I've taken a lot of data, and it looks to me as though the charge bonus actually only adds half to your melee attack. And that would make sense. Like, the game got battles took noticeably longer in Warhammer 2 versus Warhammer 1, and it was noticeable. You could feel it right away, because I had just come off a This is Total Dwarfhammer, my first This is Total Dwarfhammer campaign, and then went right into a Mortal Empires campaign, so I just noticed it right away. Now, for sure, that 35 base attack percentage, or the base hit percentage, and the 8% minimum makes a difference, but the charge bonus could make some difference too. But maybe they wanted to reduce that for lords, all the lord sniping that was going around, where you get goons gods come in and they all charge and they do an immense amount of damage. Maybe you wanted to reduce that some. I'm not really sure, and I'm not even sure if it's half, but it looks like that based on my data. So I'd like to do some more testing, and as I do more and more testing, that number will get clearer and clearer, but that's what it appears to be right now. But this is an amazing website. It has everything you could ever want on it. And even if you go to the far end of it, it shows their regiment of renown. It shows their key inside of the game. You can look at their abilities, spells, attributes, the upkeep, campaign cost, and multiplayer cost. And these actually are decoupled. That's one of the things I was talking about in one of my improving Total War Warhammer videos, and they're already decoupled. So it's funny that I didn't even notice that. Didn't even take the time to do the research. So projectile collision radius, projectile number, marksmanship bonus, like there's a whole bunch of stuff in here that is just absolutely amazing, and which is really useful to go over. And if you mouse over it, it has a lot of little extra bits in here, so very, very useful to go and look at this website. If you haven't and you really do like looking at units, it is absolutely fantastic. And thank you so much for showing me this. I love it. I wish I could, maybe, I don't know if I can download this somehow or export it. I might be able to. What does that do? Units grid. Oh, cool. KV rules. Oh my god. Fatigue effects. I mean, this is amazing. So, threshold exhausted, so your armor, when you're exhausted, you only make use of 75% of your armor. Your speed is 85% when you're exhausted. Melee attack is 70%. Charge bonus 70%. Reload time 65%. Melee defense. Huh. So maybe melee defense doesn't... It used to be 65% here. Maybe that's one of the other things they did to increase the length of the games. Like, dwarfs just all of a sudden got good, and maybe that would have made a pretty huge difference for melee defense not being reduced with fatigue level. That's what it looks like to me here. I'm just gonna campaign difficulties. Oh, wow. This website's amazing. I'm gonna probably spend. I don't have. I'm like so busy right now. I don't have enough time. Getting ready to go on vacation, but you know, uh, you know, I just unability scaling, change logs. Oh my God, this is amazing. Whoever made this website, thank you so much, because it's just absolutely incredible. So, anyways, I don't really know what else to go through. I just wanted to show you this amazing website that was shown to me so I could share it, and the testing that I did, and the spreadsheet that I built, and really hopefully I've got a better understanding of all this stuff. It's, when you do these kind of tests, always pays to do a lot of tests, and I've been trying to increase the number of tests, and it's easy to get lazy and only do a few tests and, try and make conclusions based on a few tests. But this is why you do lots of tests, because the more tests you do, if maybe I should have done 100 tests each. I really don't know, but 50, I've got about 200 good solid data points on these three, and I've got some other testing as well. So that's what it's looking like to me, is these things that I talked about in the beginning look to be generally pretty accurate with the weapon strength, weapon damage, armor piercing, and the mitigation, the way it works, the randomness, and I've added in that other source of randomness with the impact damage. I will try and make a video where I show some of that, because it's pretty big actually, and in this website there's actually some data that can show which units are better at resisting impact or knockdowns and stuff, and you can see that there was some resistance added to gyrocopters, which I noticed from playing gyrocopters, because they used to just, every time they were hit with an arrow, they would go into a stagger animation. It was so annoying, and they do that once in a while now, but not nearly as much, which is really fantastic. So anyways, that's the video. A basic overview of melee attack and defense stats, weapon damage types, the charge bonus effects, the bonus versus infantry effects, and how they add into your calculation. I hope you found that interesting, and I will be doing more testing. Love to hear comments. I mean, I've gotten some amazing comments, and I've shared them with you guys, and thank you so much, Butterwitch. That was just wonderful information, great resources, and inspired some testing. I hope you like this data set and find it interesting like I do, and thank you so much for that website, because it is amazing. I love it, and I hope anyone who watches this video gets to goes and takes a look at that website, because it's an incredible resource. And yeah, hope you found the video interesting, and I will see you soon.